Welcome to the Ultimate Aviators Podcast, where we pair a unique guest with an interesting question to help us master our craft and demystify the industry. I'm your host, Johnny Henderson, owner and operator of Harper Aviation, home of the Ultimate Kneeboard. Let's get started. Hey, thank you for joining me, Mike. Today's guest, Mike Hunnisett, is here to answer an important question for us that's maybe a little unique and different, which is how does one break into aviation photography? So the Ultimate Aviators Podcast is all about mastering our craft and demystifying the industry, and how to take pictures of cool aircraft is something that a lot of people will probably not only show interest in, but also not understand how to overcome some of the initial barriers to entry, similar to flying. So I think standard disclaimer for us, Mike and I met through our service in the National Guard, but our views represent our own personal opinions and not the Department of Defense. But excited to have you here, Mike, and glad we can get this recording on the books.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we start with some easy questions about just general photography and things. So what sparked your love of both aviation and photography before you even paired them together? And you can start with the picture taking side or the aviation side.
Sure. So it was kind of like a mix for me. Aviation is, I really got my start at Oshkosh, which is where a lot of people get their start at. 2007 was my first year at Oshkosh. I've been pretty much every year since. And so that really sparked and continues to drive my love for aviation. For photography, my mom is a photographer too, so that's really what got me started. Picked up a camera when I was 13 years old, just started taking random for fun photos and never put it down. Found a passion so much in it that I went to film school for a couple years, and then joined the Army and took up photography in the Army and continue to do all of that today. So really a mix of my two passions is what I'm doing.
That's awesome. So I had never heard of Oshkosh until more towards when I was in the Army, moving towards aviation. So how did you hear about that? Obviously, it's a huge event for all aviation enthusiasts, but did you get an ad, or was your mom into it already as a photographer, or what brought you to Oshkosh?
So Oshkosh came from my stepdad. He's a pilot, but we lived in Minnesota. That's where I grew up. So being only a couple hours from Oshkosh, that was like the summer pilgrimage was to spend the week in Oshkosh and just watch planes for the week and just really nerd out as much as I could.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to have to get up there sometime, but also the idea of flying into the aviation mecca where there's no space and super congested airspace freaks me out a little bit. So
you got to do it at some point. It is so overwhelming the first time you go, but it's so awesome.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. And I'll definitely have to make a point to go there. Do you remember the first plane or aircraft that you ever photographed? Was it at Oshkosh?
The first plane I photographed would have been at Oshkosh. That's really where I picked up my love for aviation photography. I have no idea what the first one would have been. It probably would have been during the show, and probably would have been some high-performance jet or military jet, but I can't remember which one it is. But yeah, I mean, being there every year has just fueled my passion, and I continue to strive to be better every year that I'm there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Before we hit record, we were chatting a little bit, and you mentioned the difference between a spotter and a professional. So sounds like you got your start as a hobby photographer and then transitioned that into basically a career for yourself, where you get to be around aircraft and also behind the lens of a camera. So what was it like for you to operate as a spotter for a while, and then what did that transition look like for you to say, like, I can actually get paid to do this?
So the transition for me actually happened at Oshkosh, of all places.
Nice.
I'd just been going year after year, like doing my thing, taking photos. And I had actually sent a bunch of photos to one of the pilots for the Red Bull Air Force. And he invited me out the next day to go with the team and shoot some photos. And since then, I've started doing a couple more shoots for Red Bull and doing some contracts for other events with them, like baseball and Flugtag down here in Florida. So I would say, like, the networking and the connections that I made from just taking photos has really been the key player in being able to step up and like become a professional photographer and start making money doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So for any artist, I think it's important to have a portfolio. Is it you just caught the attention of Red Bull through that portfolio, or were you super active on social media and then they caught a glimpse, or did you meet them
Yeah,
while you were there?
I would say a mix of both. So I met the pilot while I was there and showed him some photos. But in the modern day, social media is so powerful for anyone with a portfolio. I would say even more so than having a website, just because there's so much more reach. All of the algorithms on social media are pushing your content to people that you would never think would see it. And so I think that's really like the key point these days is like if you are staying active on social and you are putting out consistent high quality work, it's a really awesome way and quote unquote easy way almost to get noticed and really start to build those networks, start those conversations, and open the doors to be able to do this as a profession.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I have also toyed around with social media a little bit, and I think you're probably in a pretty good spot where I have a physical product that I sell through Harper Aviation, but as a photographer, it's probably a little easier to feed the beast of social media because naturally photo and video catches people's attention more than like a sales pitch or
Mm-hmm.
just text. So that makes a lot of sense that social media, especially today, leads to your success as a photographer. Has it changed any since you've now gone more pro and have carved out a niche for yourself?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely changed. I mean, you're always having to work to be different in social media.
Hmm.
In aviation photography, when you go to an air show and there's thousands of other photographers, it becomes a really saturated space, and that's great. It's really awesome seeing everyone kind of like working on their hobbies and honing their craft. But to be able to keep doing it professionally, you really have to look for something new, a different angle that isn't usually seen, or a different way of doing things. And there's some I follow some amazing aviation photographers that are always doing something different, and it makes me feel, even as a professional, like having imposter syndrome. Just looking at the way some of these guys do things is just crazy. So that's I would say that's the difference, and that's also a built-in tip that I'm throwing in here right off the bat is just finding where you excel and finding like the aspect that makes you different from every other photographer.
Well, speaking of imposter syndrome, right? This is episode 2 of a podcast that I started on a way to make aviation a little more approachable, but also to offer up an additional like media library for my business where it's not just selling a physical good.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally relate to the imposter syndrome side, or even as a new pilot, right? Everyone thinks, who am I to be out here in this airspace when it's full of professional pilots? Um, so then, can you elaborate on the niche that you have carved out for yourself? Like, what is Mike Hunnisett's uh, bread and butter, or what you're known for, or even what you're most drawn to, and therefore would be most proficient at?
Sure. So I would say like my touch that I try to add at every air show is I try to shoot from somewhere that isn't like the typical spot. So at Oshkosh for a couple years in a row now, I spend a day outside of the airport and shoot the airplanes coming in on approach from the opposite side from where the crowd sees everything. So there's a lot of photographers on the flight line where they're all getting kind of the same shot of the plane passing. But for me, it's like finding that new spot that people aren't seeing this from, and really taking the image like in that approach or something different. And I've been super lucky in this last year that I've started working with Tora on their pyro field. So now I get to build pyro, and then I get to photograph an air show from somewhere that barely anyone gets to see. So that's really opened up the door even more for me to be able to like get whole new angles and things that people usually
Yeah.
won't see.
Okay, so initially my thought was, yeah, location makes sense. You want to differentiate your pictures. And I thought, okay, how are you going to get premium access to things? But you started out by saying you're not even on the airport. So you could be anywhere shooting cool photos from an angle that people wouldn't otherwise see. And then that led to being invited to the premium places on the airfield where you can still get those unique shots, but you're also interfacing with more of the behind the scenes people on top of what you're doing. So that approach seems pretty smart.
Yeah, so kind of two different avenues. Like the shooting, I would call it quote unquote outside the box for to be punny, because air shows have aerobatic boxes, obviously. But yeah, shooting outside the box when these planes are coming in, they've got to bank into that box and stay within their TFR limit. So you know that they're going to be doing tight angles at high speed to come in for that. So that's what got me kind of looking at that. And then as I started to really differentiate myself and gain a following from air show photography, that's how I started opening the doors. So with Tora for me, one thing was I never knew I would be good at video, and I hated doing video for a long time, and that was another aspect that opened a door for me. I shot some pretty sweet footage of their airplanes and their pyro, and they invited me out, and now I'm actually on the team working in public relations for them. So kind of differentiating myself opened that door, and now I have a whole new world of views and sites that I get to see that is just really making my aviation photography the next level up from where I was before.
Yeah, well, and I guess that's surprising to me too, because you said you didn't think you could do video, but that's how we met, is through prepping a video. So that's kind of crazy that that's what I know you for.
It's a learned craft, and when I first started that out, I hated it. And honestly, right as we were meeting in the Guard and doing our video for that, was the early kind of days of my video stuff. So I'd always done photo for a while and learned that branching out helps. So I started becoming a hybrid shooter, and that's been most of my success, has been doing the hybrid of video and photo. So,
well, especially for the social media, right? The library of little clips you can share makes a lot of sense to have some video with that. But I imagine with video comes a lot more post-production processing. Have you found the art of photography is still where you're most fulfilled and maybe requires less work, or is it just different work when you switch to video?
I feel like it's a lot different work. So doing video for me, it's obviously time intensive. I can shoot for 20 minutes and I'll be editing for 3 to 4 hours. But photo, I've learned, has become just as labor intensive. And as I've continued to really challenge myself, as great of an image is coming out of in camera, there's still a lot of work to put in post-processing, and that's really what also helps set photographers apart, is taking that great image in camera and then really bringing it to the next level in post-production and working with light and color to really make an image even better. And so I used to spend very minimal time editing my photos, and now I spend probably, I'd say 20 minutes for a photo to be able to post on social media, to where in my eyes it's good enough to post.
What's a good transition? Because one of the questions that I had set aside for you is what makes an aviation shot stand out. So for you, we talked about location a little bit, and then even after your ideal shot, right, you're still doing some of that post-production. So how do you tee up a shot to be quote unquote good, or what you're looking for on a shoot?
Well, I think every photographer has a different view of what makes a photo great. But for me personally, I will only keep about 10% of the images that I take from an air show. So I will cull those down to the 10% or so. And then going through there, I'm looking for key things. So I'm looking for, if it's like a jet, I'm looking for vapor in the air, something that really adds something to that image, and it's not just flat and level wings. So I'm looking for something in a turn. I'm looking for afterburners, and I'm really looking to get an image where I can see the pilot as well. So I'm not shooting behind. I'm looking for kind of like, for example's sake, like it's banking up and you can see the pilot on one side and the afterburners below. And then on a prop plane, I'm looking for the blurred prop. I used to shoot really high shutter speed, and I learned that it just takes all of the motion out of that. So really bringing down my shutter speed and blurring the background, getting that prop blur in there and giving it some, like being able to tell a story with the image is what makes it great to me. I'm not really a big fan of like the level wings and just flying flat, or like no kind of depth to it. So for me, that's what makes an image great.
Well, as a pilot, obviously, I like being seen in the photo. It's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to be like, hey, look, I'm flying this helicopter that is a cool picture, but really could be anyone. And I just only know it's me through the tail number and that I was on this flight schedule that day. But the
Mm-hmm.
shots basically only through the National Guard public affairs type situation where I am able to pick myself out in the cockpit. It adds like an extra measure of pride and shareability for me as the pilot. Do you ever have a connection with the pilots that you're shooting? Like, hey man, check out this cool photo, or being able to connect with the aviator afterwards and be like, I'd love to share this with you because I know it's you.
Yeah, I think social media has made this a lot easier. But there's multitudes of ways to do this now. You can just randomly throw out collab tags and see which aviators are looking at their social media and see if they'll accept it. For me, it's gotten a little easier since I've become a quote unquote performer on the pyro field.
Mm-hmm.
We all chat after air shows, and so actually having those conversations and building those relationships with pilots has helped a lot. But before that, it's been shooting them a message, shooting an email, going to their website, like saying, "Hey, I got this really awesome photo." Um, the kind of transitioning on the same question for the professional side of this, it's difficult because there's so many photographers everywhere you go that there will always be someone who can give a free photo. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where you've really got to, as a photographer, set yourself apart, because if you want to get into the revenue generating side of this, you have to really take an image that nobody else has and nobody else will just give to a pilot, so that
Right.
you can sell your work and sell yourself.
How have you thought about the sales portion of photography? Do you get into posters or any kind of product, or is it strictly digital prints that you sell?
So I don't do any kind of digital like downloads or anything, because I like to keep my distribution of my photos.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's 50-50 between clients that are paying like for a service. So let's say I get a contract from Red Bull to shoot Flugtag and I'm delivering X amount of images to them. So that's one side. And then the other side is I have a print shop on both my website and I sell on Etsy as well. So that's where the other half of the revenue comes from. But with how things are produced and what people are willing to pay for things, the margin on that isn't as high. So really setting yourself apart to where you can get the service driven revenue is where it's been at for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and I feel like especially in today's market of Amazon, quick delivery, and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
people expect things cheaper than ever. But there's some like famous artist quote that comes to mind where it's like, well, it took you 20 minutes to draw that. And you're like, well, no, it took me
Right.
20 years to build the experience to draw that in 20 seconds for you. Or to shoot that one photo is a career's worth of experience leading to that shot. So
Yep. For sure.
maybe the print is worth 50 cents at Walgreens, but the teeing that shot up is a career's worth of experience that you're drawing on.
Yeah, and I mean, to put that in a short perspective for listeners, like, and when an aviation photographer captures something, they're tracking a plane, they're positioning themselves at an airport or an airfield in the exact right place within light to get that image, and then working on all of their experience to draw like tracking in a photo. So if I'm at 1/30th of a second shutter speed, I need to be deadlocked on that plane or it's going to be blurry, and I get one shot to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So for any photographer that's out there doing that, that's where you really learn to appreciate, and where a lot of people don't see the labor that goes into it is all of the prep time, and like you get often one chance. Like if you're coming by on a Black Hawk and I'm standing there taking a photo, you're not
Mm-hmm.
coming back around because I missed the shot. You're
Right.
you're gone. So you get the one opportunity really, and that's where it really, like, that's where the effort comes into, is all the planning for that.
Right. Well, this is where I'm a little out of my depth, but I'm still interested in hearing what experience you can provide. But how do you handle the technical side of lighting for your shots? Because presumably everything you do is outdoors, so lighting is out of
Mm-hmm.
your control. So then how do you handle the thought process of lighting, especially because you mentioned I mean, you could be facing toward the sun, it could be overcast, or you're doing stuff with pyrotechnics. So how does light play into your craft for aviation photography?
It's to reiterate, yeah, it's a bunch of planning that goes into it. So let's say at an air show, you're kind of it's a crapshoot, right? So if
Yeah.
you're at an air show photographing, you are limited to an area unless you have access like to a pyro field or something where I can get a different angle. If I'm just shooting in an air show that I'm not a performer at, I am limited to one area that people can go. And so you really have to kind of plan for that. Like if it's backlit, you're planning for the best lighting scenario. Like, oh, it maybe one half of the box is backlit and one's not. So you're only taking photos on one side. Or like last night I had a photo shoot at St. Petersburg Airport here in Florida. And from where I was and where everyone else was watching this, it was a super backlit shoot. It was just becoming sunset. So I actually went to the other side of the airport to shoot opposite of where everyone else was in order to get the front lighting on the plane. So it's really like, and there's so many apps out there to do this, but it's checking where you can be on an airfield versus where your light's going to be at any time of the day. Because at an air show, the light is changing over the 4 or 5 hours that an air show takes. So with that, as a photographer, you need to move around and position yourself to follow that light. So there's a whole bunch that goes into it, and sometimes it really works out, and sometimes it's completely out of your control, and you have to roll with the punches and take what you can get.
Yeah. That would be a tricky situation to be in. And in a past life, I had worked in the wedding industry doing DJing, and I never envied the wedding photographers because, again, it's someone's special day. You're a single point of failure if you don't get the right shots, or if you don't save the stuff correctly, or if you don't handle post-production or whatever. Like, someone is going to be extremely unhappy. So I imagine working contracts like Red Bull, you're in the same boat. Like you said, we're not coming back to do this. So then what other techniques do you have to capture, say, like aerobatic flights where the flight path may be less predictable and you might be operating at a shutter speed where you've got to get it that one and done, or it's going to be blurry or missed?
Yeah, so I would say like most of what I do, it's the one and done. And it really goes back to like if you are briefed, or you listen to a brief, or you can follow the air show from previous years, or you know how to read winds like at an airport, and this is where knowing some sort of aviation background helps. You'll be able to know like a runway usage or a heading that someone's going to fly. And from that, you can then take that positioning. I can take like, oh, this is going to happen at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I can look at a sun map and see which direction the sun's coming from. And then I'm looking at an airport map and I'm saying, okay, well, where on this airport, if I have access to the airport itself, where on a ramp can I go? Or if not, what are the public access roads around this location that I can get to, that all kind of work within each other? So I need an access road or a location that I can shoot from that lines up with the light at the right time for the photo. And then for me, the rest of it's kind of second nature just because I've been doing it for so long. But for someone new, it's you figure that part out, and then you're working on the technical side. Like, it's a prop plane, so I need to be at 1/200th of a second or lower. And as it's coming in, like you're burst shooting and you're looking for that shot. But it's a whole bunch of things put together in one, and a lot of the time you really got to cross your fingers and hope it works. And sometimes it's completely out of your control, and luckily for that, post-production has come leaps and bounds from where it used to be. So if you are forced to shoot backlit, you can bring up light and shadows in post-production and not really suffer too many consequences anymore. But at that point, it's a matter of making your photo still look natural. So if the sun's behind something and the front side's really well lit, it doesn't look real anymore at that point. So just you're kind of blending all of your skills together to really make something that fits for the situation you're in.
Yeah. Well, since you've been doing it so long, what tools have you landed on that do the heavy lifting for you? Do you have a favorite camera, or do you have a camera for the air shows versus videography? What tools are doing the heavy lifting for you that you like working with?
So this is going to sound pretty contradictory to myself, but my favorite camera is one that I don't actually use. My favorite camera to shoot aviation with, and anything in general, is the Sony A7 IV, which was one of the newer releases. That is just an all-around amazing camera. I switched from the A7 IV to the A7R3, and I switched to the R series because they handle hybrid shooting the best. So the R series is like Sony's equivalent of a video and photo camera in one. So I switched to that, and I'm actually not super happy with it. I love it for video, and it shoots great video, and that's why I stick with it, because I am a hybrid shooter. But from a camera perspective, and this gets technical and nerdy, but there's so many pixels in that series of camera that the pixel density in it just blows out everything in your photo. So if I get like a little bit of camera noise from a lack of light in my photo, it's amplified because of how many megapixels are in that camera. So if I were to switch, I would go back to the A7 IV in a heartbeat. But Sony for me is where it's at. I love their lenses. I love the software. I love the hardware. Just for me as a hybrid shooter, being on the R series just works better.
And then are you bringing a whole kit with you? Do you use a tripod too? Is it all, I imagine you have to do a lot of handheld because you're tracking aircraft. Are there any other tools that you have found useful? Or even just like, yeah, there's a camping chair that I bring every time because this is perfect for photography.
I shoot pretty minimal. So I used to shoot on a tripod for video. And I just learned that things are moving so fast that it's so hard to track. And I've also learned that I need to be nimble, because if I need to move at the last second because of an obstacle or because of light, or let's say, I mean, we've experienced this together on missions before where wind just changes in a day. So we're landing one runway in the morning and we're coming back another runway in the afternoon. So if I'm in a situation where something's like a couple minutes out and we do a runway change, I need to move to the other side of an airfield pretty quickly. So for me, it's like working minimalist works the best. So I travel with just the camera and 2 lenses. And that also helps out because when I'm at air shows, there's opportunities sometimes where I can go fly and take air to air, or I need to move and like get some ground shots somewhere else real quick. So for me, working bare bones has been the most beneficial. And I know that's probably blasphemous to some people, and some people will swear by tripods and some other things, but I just like shooting camera and lens.
No, I'm with you. I'm not a photographer, right? But the only way I can relate is that I'm in a really old helicopter that doesn't have a lot of tools to help me out. And we always say that we're better pilots for it because we have tools that make the pilot do more work. Now, when you get further along and are doing more complex missions and things, right, a lot of those tools take that workload off of the pilot and free you up to do other decision making. So they definitely have their place. But I feel fortunate to be a pilot that has grown up without a lot of those systems to help me out and make me stronger. I don't have to be nimble, right? Like I'm strapped in the aircraft either way. But okay, maybe the last thing on equipment. Have you ever had gear fail at the worst possible moment, or beat yourself up over like a missed shot because of anything weird like that?
Yes. Yeah, it's mostly video. So GoPros and planes don't work well together. For me, so I actually had this just happen a couple weeks ago at practice for Tora Tora Tora.
No.
We had some of our aircraft there, and we were shooting an in-cockpit shot with a GoPro. And I can see what you're thinking. It's not as bad as you think.
No, it's fine.
But so we had the GoPro in the cockpit, but because it's a World War II era T6, the GoPro is getting so hot that it just overheats instantly. So every time I'm getting that GoPro, like the recording button is hit, it's shutting off a couple minutes into the recording. So I'm missing the one shot that I need, or I'm missing like the wall of fire detonating for pyro. So for that's a pretty big failure. Luckily for me, when I'm shooting like lens and camera, there's not much that's gone wrong. Like any photographer, sometimes I'll lift my camera up and the lens cap is still on and something passes and I miss that chance. But yeah, that's the biggest failures for me has been on the video side. But you always work with what you get, and I think you can probably relate to that as a pilot. Is you got to make work what you have. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, stuff like that stresses me out, but I guess we do it in the aircraft all the time too, right? You've got a mission with a definitive wheels down time
hmm
and you adapt throughout to get there. But yeah, the missing the shot piece stresses me out, but that's because I mostly think about the wedding side, which then you're dealing with bridezillas, but I can't imagine dealing with pilots is any better. So
I yeah, I feel like we're pretty like you as a pilot have kind of the same scenarios, right? So you have like a time on target. Let's use the Broncos flyover as an example. You have a time on target, and you've got to adapt as you're flying. If that song speeds up or slows down, you have to make that split second decision and overcome that. So same sort of thing, completely different avenues between photography and flying, but
yeah.
definitely some similarities to like adapting and overcoming.
Yeah. Yeah. You eventually figure it out. And like you said, you draw on experience. Like it's second nature for you now, but there's
hmm
still things that you have to do. Okay, maybe another one last nerdy question. So aviation is rampant with checklists. Do you have a checklist that you use as a photographer to either get out the door with all of your gear or start setting up for a shot? Do you have a checklist or a process that you've put into place?
Yes, it's more like a hybrid between a packing list and a checklist. So I'm notorious for forgetting things. So for me, like I have to have like I need my chargers, I need my batteries, I need my memory cards. So I have a checklist that I work the day before a shoot because I it's no use for me if I walk into something with a memory card that hasn't been transferred yet and I can't shoot on it. So it's like clearing memory cards, charging batteries, packing the batteries once they're charged. But then day of, it's a lot of like the I'm looking at maps, I'm looking at light on and kind of the things we discussed before, like where things are going to be throughout the day. But I'm looking at like different times of the day too. And I'm sure you do this as pilots is like, well, what happens if I'm delayed? And 2 hours later, then what's the weather looking like? What's the light looking like?
Right.
So I'm factoring that in too for when you guys as pilots are potentially delayed somewhere or something happens to where we're now shooting this hours later, that we're still successful. So for me, the checklist is like taking everything that I researched and making sure it works in every scenario throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've come to really rely on, so I'm full time, I'm a systems engineer. And so I'm all about offloading things from memory, especially if I feel like I'm working a crazy schedule between guard and full time and family and other obligations. I always just think, is this worth memorizing or can I just put it somewhere where I can reference? So, like, my kneeboard, for example, has a ton of quick reference information. And I've been asked by instructor pilots, hey, can you tell me X, Y, and Z? I'm like, I definitely do not have that memorized, but I can show you exactly where that I can pull that information from when I need it. And I think aviation, at least in Army aviation, has shifted more towards minimal memorization and using a quick reference for like emergency procedures. There are a few things other than, say, a dual engine failure or a fire that require immediate action. And I think the Army is starting to recognize that to where it offloads some of that rote memorization from the pilot and just says, okay, there is one thing that you have to do immediately. Everything else, pull out the checklist because you're more prone to make mistakes without referencing that. And so I find even just packing my bag to go to the gym on the airfield, right? I'm gonna do a workout in the morning and then change into my uniform. And if I forget something, like what processes do I have in place to fix that? And so like I leave an extra uniform at work. Anyway, I love those processes. So anytime I can hear someone else's systems is fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I mean same thing. So we're working the contingencies, and what'll be surprising to some pilots is a lot of photographers actually use a lot of the same tools you guys do. So we're looking at ForeFlight to look at wind and weather. We're looking at ADSB for where you guys are. We have radios, one-way radios, so we can hear, but like we'll listen to tower or ground or five fingers and hear the chatter, or like that's how some of our pilots can talk to us on like controlled shoots. Is like yesterday it was on Five Fingers Plus. They were just chatting when they were coming inbound, so I could hear like, hey, they're inbound to the airport, prepare for the shot. So we use a lot of the same tools between the two different industries, which has blown my mind the more that those two worlds kind of cross. But yeah, as you were saying, just having the contingencies, having a lot of the same processes to just figure out the way to do it when things go wrong is a big benefit for us.
Right. Well, I'm glad you didn't say worlds collide, because we don't like that word in aviation.
No.
But speaking of which, have you noticed any changes in your industry with drones? I think a person behind the camera makes a big difference, and then also just the type of resolution you get from a handheld versus whatever a drone can carry. But have you seen drones changing aviation photography?
I've seen some people doing some really cool things with drones. So I personally got my Part 107 just to be able to do drone work when I can. I haven't done anything with aviation, but I follow a guy on social media, and his name is Nico. His handle is Nico Films with a Z. But he actually flies FPV drones in the aviation world. So he also does shoots for like Red Bull Air Force. So he will follow aerobatic planes as they are flying and give the first person view of them falling out of the sky or doing whatever they're doing at the time. But he's really setting the boundary for aviation and drones. For the rest of it, it's really a world that doesn't cross too much, just because there's so much issues with drones and planes where people don't know what they're doing that it ruins it a lot of the times for the people that do know what they're doing. I've had to like do some minor things like, oh, I'm flying near an airport, so I need to submit to the FAA to get authorization to fly, but I've never actually done drones with airplanes, but that's definitely a dream in the far future.
Yeah, well, I think Red Bull's the perfect proving ground, right? Because they're flying wild missions anyway. So for me, I'm like, yeah, keep a drone as far away from me as you can. But if they're landing on, I don't know, where was that, in United Arab Emirates, that helipad, a small plane on that, right? They're already doing crazy stuff where they are just implementing risk mitigation at a different level that I'm sure they're thinking through a lot of that, which is a good proving ground for how the two mix. So okay, well, maybe my last question for you before we move into more of like a lightning round and wrap up. So you have also previously volunteered at a museum, and then you've done a bunch of historic shooting. So can you tell me a little bit about that experience? It was down in Colorado Springs. You're at a museum, right?
Yeah, so I volunteered at the National Museum of World War II Aviation. It's attached to Colorado Springs Airport. They have 29 warbirds there that are all operational. So that's actually a stepping stone that got me pretty far in the aviation photography industry, is volunteering and really getting to know the pilots and how things work. So for them, I worked in public relations. I was doing videos and photos of their airframes. So every month they would have fly days, and I would go down there, shoot video of their lectures that they would do, and then go outside on the ramp and take photos, put GoPros on planes, and do some really awesome stuff with them. And that really opened the door and built my proficiency in understanding how aviation and airports work, because I'm out on a ramp where I'm trusted to make the right decisions and the right calls. So for me, like being able to read flight patterns and sit in briefs and figure out how this is going to work really helped me step up doing that on the outside of volunteering as well. And also really continues to fuel my appreciation for warbirds and everyone that flies and works on them. I'm fascinated with World War II history, and so seeing P-51s on airshow weekends and P-47s and all these other airframes fly is just phenomenal to me. So being able to be part of that legacy and try to feature these airframes that need future pilots and need maintainers and need photos taken of them to continue the history was really awesome for me, and it's something that I continue to do with Tora and the Commemorative Air Force now, and just highlighting all of their aircraft as well.
Yeah, well, I think you touched on something that's totally underrated, which is you were trying to break into aviation photography, and offering your services as a volunteer gave you access and proximity to what you were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And right, if you can't necessarily offer the expertise, or if you don't have the money to start paying for some of that stuff, I mean, the amount of pilots that started by refueling aircraft and then just sitting in on briefs and then decided, hey, I'm finally in a position where I can start pursuing my private pilot's license. I think that's super underutilized. And even with your Oshkosh experience, right, just being in proximity to what you want to do and then connecting with the right people goes a really long ways. And just that networking is so important.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got to start somewhere. And so whether you choose to volunteer like in the early part of your career, or for me, it was a stepping stone and a way to give back, and get my foot in the door of an industry that I really wanted to be in. You got to pick and choose where that is for you. But everyone's got to start somewhere. If you start out by volunteering and making a name for yourself, that's an awesome way to start. For me, I kind of just kept doing my thing. And then once I started getting professional, I said, oh, like, I would really love to get into some warbird stuff. And volunteering my time and my skill set really is what helped to open that door. And I don't regret a minute of it. Giving back and volunteering your time and your skills to something that you feel personally is super deserving of it is just it's on a whole nother level of like euphoric to just sit there and like you are 5 feet away from like radial engines firing up, waking up from like being inside for the winter. You can't beat it. So yeah, I would recommend to anyone that's into aviation photography is like give back your skill set and your time somewhere if you can.
For sure. Yeah. Well, it's been awesome. We'll move into a fun lightning round here in a minute, but I just think our interview today has been so cool because it spans so many different interests, right? We're targeting those interested in the aviation field, but photography pulls in a whole different audience, or even just those interested in historic aircraft and that era of aviation, right? There's so many different interests that we've covered today, just by nature of the niche you've carved out for yourself and some of the careers that you've had along the way to what you're doing today. So this is awesome. Thanks for your experience here.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's very symbiotic between photographers and pilots. So hopefully listeners to this will keep that relationship going too.
Yeah, of course. I've obviously benefited from you being around taking photo and video too. So, okay, let's do some quick questions. This is just fun. Way to wrap up. What's your favorite aircraft to shoot and why?
P-51. I'm a huge fan of just the sound of a P-51, and recent opportunities for me being on the pyro field, having P-51s fly over you at 20, 30 feet at like max speed is just, it's a whole other world of like, it just gets your adrenaline going. So I would have to say P-51.
Love it. Do you have aspirations of flying yourself, or do you like being on the ground?
I do. No, I do. Okay. I would become a helicopter pilot primarily over a fixed-wing aircraft pilot, but definitely not out of the cards yet. It's just a matter of when and how and where I'll do it.
Okay, well, that's the only acceptable answer as a rotor-wing pilot myself. Do you have a favorite airport to shoot at?
Ooh.
Or even just one that has a good lounge and snacks?
I wouldn't say I have a favorite. I really enjoy Lakeland down here in Florida. You just get a whole bunch of variety. I did really like Colorado Springs Airport in Colorado just because you never know what you're going to get there with it being attached to an Air Force base. You're getting cargo, you're getting fighters, you're getting warbirds because of the museum. So Lakeland and Colorado Springs would be my top two.
Yeah, well, especially at Colorado Springs. Like with the Air Force Academy right there, the Thunderbirds will stage there, Air Force One or Air Force Two, depending on who's speaking at the Air Force Academy graduation. I know 160th comes through and stages there just to go up and do mountain training. So being in Colorado, it's one of the, I think, hidden gems is the Colorado Springs Airport. Maybe not for commercial aviation, right? It's a shorter leg just being south of the Denver International Airport, but I can imagine from a aviation photography standpoint, that's a gold mine.
And I don't see it being a gold mine for too much longer, sadly, as they expand. All of our publicly accessible areas are getting harder and harder to get to. So, but yeah, that airport is amazing. Like you said, there's always aircraft flying in. People will overnight for the Air Force Academy games. So you never know what you'll see at Springs.
Mm-hmm. If you could take a photo of any fictional aircraft, what would it be? Whether it be more realistic like Top Gun 2's Dark Star, or even fictional like Star Wars or something.
Fictional aircraft. Does the F-47 count? Because it doesn't really exist yet. That'd be a fun one to do. Just like it would be cool to be one of the first people to shoot a photo of something that just came out.
For sure.
That's why I say that. But yeah, Dark Star would be pretty cool. I would love to get like an air-to-air of something like Dark Star with Afterburner, but or even a TIE Fighter would be pretty sweet too if I could do a fictional aircraft.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, TIE Fighter would be sweet. I have an Empire patch on the back of my flight helmet, so
okay, yeah,
that'd be my vote. Is there a plane or an aviation moment that you have missed and you still think about?
Oof. That's a loaded question because I miss stuff all the time. Yeah, I think about like our shoot that we did over the Broncos Stadium a lot because I was doing video. And I really wanted the wide angle shot of our like us on the ramp of the Chinook and then the two Blackhawks and the Lakota with the fireworks coming up from the stadium as a still wide angle. So I think about that one quite a lot because I had the opportunity to get it on video, but I would have loved to have gotten that one on still as an air-to-air. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the rest, there's so many to count. I mean, like even today, there was an A400 that flew into MacDill, which I'm 10 minutes from, and I made the call to not go and chase it. So, like, there's always regrets that you wish you'd get.
For sure.
But definitely, like, out of all the planned stuff, that formation shot with the Blackhawks and Lakota would have been sweet.
Yeah. Okay, last one for you. Is there a dream shot that you're still chasing where it may or may not be in the cards, but if you could nail this shot, it'd be a highlight in your whole career?
My dream shot, I need to go to Red Flag to do it, but I keep seeing in DoD or Department of Defense videos and photos like the shot with the sphere. I want like the close-up of an F-15 or an F-22 because those are two of my favorite airframes in full afterburner with the sphere in the background and just kind of having that like jello effect from the afterburner heat. That's my dream shot, and I will probably work to get it for a long time because there's no way I will be insanely lucky if I go to one Red Flag and get that shot. But that's the bucket list. Other than that, I need to get out to the Sidewinder in California and shoot some low-level stuff. Either a Typhoon or a Tornado through the Sidewinder or even Mach Loop in the UK would be the other bucket list item.
That's awesome. I love how, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, right? But like how nerdy this is, but like so appreciated by this audience, right? Like you can totally nerd out on all the aviation stuff and we're here cheering for you and we're just on opposite sides of the same events, right?
Yep. I mean, you guys cheer for it just as much because if we get the shot, you get the shot. So
yeah,
every pilot would love, like I have a friend in the UK that shoots in the Mach Loop all the time, and he'll shoot Lakenheath F-15s, and those pilots like beg for those shots, and he'll give them to him, and then he gets like patches and other cool swag in return. But yeah, when we nerd out and get the shot, the pilot gets the shot, so it's really a win-win.
Well, I love it. Thanks for coming on, Mike. Where can people find you?
So I'm on social media. All of my handles are at Mike Hunnisett. It's Hunnisett. I post mostly on Instagram, but there's Facebook, TikTok, YouTube as well. Otherwise, if you're looking to get in touch, my website is mikehunnisett.com, and I have my portfolio and contact forms on there too.
And you're on Etsy if people want to buy shots.
And I'm on Etsy. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Mike. This has been awesome, and it's been fun nerding out with you over a part of aviation that I don't think is top of mind for most, but is still super appreciated and just really cool to feature. So thanks for carving out the time.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, and really appreciate you as a pilot branching out and bringing on other aspects of the aviation industry too. So thank you.
For sure. All right, we'll see you, Mike.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on the Ultimate Aviators Podcast. Professionals use professional tools, and you can visit ultimatekneeboard.com for your aviation needs. Additionally, visit harperaviation.com/gifts to find your special aviator something nice. Music was by TheFatRat. Until next time, clear skies.